Great Scott. Great Scott. Great Scott.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another fabulous episode of Great Scott. I'm Scotty V. Thanks for watching. So, anytime that you're talking about movies, comic books, science fiction, the geeky stuff of the world, you're gonna have, on the internet, clickbait articles. And these are articles that say something absurd or extreme, or something that may have some basis in the thought of reality, but usually is about rumor mongering and about getting people to click on that article, go in and read it. And generally, they have very little substance, very little actual news, very little reporting being done, very little backup for their claims. The latest one that I'm speaking of right now is that a Warner Brothers executive says that they're cutting ties with Zack Snyder. You go into the article, and I don't even think they say this executive's name. They put something in quotes that somebody may have said. They talk about how the vision doesn't match up with what DC wants to provide going forward, and that suddenly means, and speculation is the rest by the author of the article, that means that clearly we're never going to see Zack Snyder again in the DC Extended Universe, and that his bow out at the end of completing Justice League for his family issues was clearly indicative of the fact that he and DC are cutting off their relationship. And then they mentioned something about, this is clearly evident when you realize that Geoff Johns took over creative power in the DC film universe. Again, speculating that because Geoff Johns is supposedly now in charge, even though he's been in charge for years and years, he and Zack Snyder can't possibly work together because the implication is Geoff Johns is cool and knows what he's doing when it comes to DC superheroes, and Zack Snyder is not cool and has brought forth a Superman and other Justice League heroes that fans aren't happy with. Now, a lot of this speculation is based in reality, in that many fans and critics were not and have not been happy with the DC movie offerings as of yet before Wonder Woman, which pretty much received critical praise and fan praise across the board. Whereas the Man of Steel movie and the second Man of Steel movie, which was Batman v Superman, did not so much. There were things that I would have done differently. There were things I wouldn't have done at all. But I have said from the beginning, I appreciate the darker tones. I appreciate the realistic feel it has. The way it might feel if a Superman actually came to Earth and this actually went down. There would be a lot of people afraid. There would be a lot of people wondering. There would be a lot of racism, hatred that just comes from not understanding something, not knowing something, or something that is different from you. And that's reality. And a lot of people just say, well, these are comic book movies. Do we have to have reality every minute? I mean, in real life, we have to deal with horrible things and reality and fear and racism. And why do we have to have it in our comic book movies? And for that, there's Marvel. The fact that, yes, they have enemies that hate them, but they don't take on any actual darkness. They don't take on any reality. They don't really have any implications after the fact. They're a fun movie. They're romps. I enjoy them all. I don't think I've disliked any, but they're a different feel, and I think that it was good that DC went in this direction. But again, this is you know, and don't come back at me when Zack Snyder doesn't come back and say, see, that wasn't clickbait, because it still is. It's his speculation, just like it's mine. That nothing so far has been said officially, and Zack didn't leave, and they didn't hire Whedon because they wanted Zack to leave. This all went down the way it went down. There are conspiracy theories all the time, and you never know. It's possible we hear later that yes, he wanted to take a break because of his family, and this will be our way to sever ties with him, and they could use that later on. People are talking about, it looks like he's going to be thrown under the bus now, and of course, if Justice League really succeeds, you will hear about how Joss Whedon's influence is the thing that saved the DC universe in film. And if it fails, you'll hear, man, they should have brought in Whedon sooner, and he maybe could have fixed the whole movie, but they didn't give him enough time. Either way, I think Zack is going to get a lot of the blame for the bad parts of the movie, or the parts of the movie that still feel like Zack parts, according to whatever critics and fans want to say that, whereas Whedon, like Batman and the DCU heroes, is the be-all end all. And clearly he did several of the Marvel movies. They were very successful. He's done other cult projects, and he is good, I guess, at banter dialogue, something that the DC films weren't necessarily going for, banter dialogue, which is okay. You can have two different things. You can have one that does one thing really well. You can have another that does something completely different. And so you don't have two of the same things. You know, you bring Whedon on, now he does all the films, and Marvel and DC films feel exactly the same. What's the point of that? There's some other clickbait articles out there, and I'll talk about another next week, but don't pay attention to everything you see, especially if when you go in there really is no substance. It's just the author offering an opinion, like what mine are. In most cases, I don't have a connection to an inside source. I don't have actual information, but I tell you straight up, these are opinion pieces. This is my opinion, my idea of what I think something might mean, or how I enjoyed an episode of something. It's not about me knowing that Zack Snyder is definitely going to come back. He may not, and he may decide himself that he's had enough criticism. He's put his heart and soul into what he's done. People haven't been that happy with it. He's got family issues. He may decide that he's done with this part of his life, and then people will say, well, of course, he's just saying that now because they've moved on from him and brought in Whedon, and they don't want him around anymore because he's a hack or whatever. People will play any story that comes out the way that suits the opinion they're trying to meet, and I don't know that we know. We'll only know if he comes back and does more work. We'll only know if they specifically say, we've moved on from Zack Snyder and we don't like the way he's going, and nobody has actually said that. It hasn't been officially released. This was some random person supposedly saying this in a clickbait article and really have no sources for it. Thanks everybody for watching, and remember, always